All right, everybody get ready, because today we are going deep, like deep into the AI world. We are talking large language models. You know those LLMs you hear about everywhere these days? All the chatbots, all the amazing things they're doing, writing emails and poems. But what happens when we push them to their conversational limits?
Yeah, it's a really cool question, isn't it? Most research has been on like those quick bursts of dialogue, but today we are going to see what happens when the conversations just stretch out. Hundreds of turns, tons of sessions, like a memory marathon for LLMs.
Exactly. We want to see if they can actually hang on to information and make sense of it way down the line. So to do that, we've got this paper evaluating very long-term conversational memory of LLM agents. This isn't your normal everyday chatbot chit-chat, huh?
No, no, not at all. These researchers, they made this whole special data set called Locomo, and it's made to test long conversation skills. We are talking 50 conversations, each one averaging 300 turns, 9,000 tokens, and they go on for like 35 sessions. That's way beyond what we normally see. Whoa, that's a marathon, all right. But I'm guessing they didn't just let the LLMs ramble on,
Oh,
right?
got it. They had some structure here. It's really neat. They had this human-machine pipeline to make the conversation. So first they used LLMs just to get like the basic conversation flowing, but then human annotators stepped in to make sure everything was consistent, flowed naturally and made sense over time.
So like a good blend of AI and human touch to set the stage. So what were the like rules of the game here in Locomo?
Okay, so to make these conversations feel real, each AI agent, they gave it a unique persona, like a character in a story. Backstories, objectives, relationships, all those details that make someone feel like a person. And then to take it even further, the conversations, they were grounded in these things called temporal event graphs, basically like timelines of events. So as the AIs are chatting, their conversation reflects like a real progression of experiences. It's not just random output. It's tied to these evolving memories.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this gets really interesting. So it's not just like, what can you remember? It's like, can you like weave these memories into a real conversation?
Yeah.
Like you're living through these experiences.
Exactly. And to make it even more challenging, they added images too.
Mm-hmm.
So they created what they called multimodal dialogue. Like think about, you're texting a friend and you send them a pic of your food. Well, the AI agents in Locomo, they had to be able to handle that back and forth, understanding the conversation and the visuals.
Now that is pushing it.
Yeah.
So we've got AI agents with personalities, they've got memories, and they're sharing pictures. What kind of tests did they come up with to see what these LLMs could do?
So they focused on three main tasks. First one is question answering QA. This is all about, can an LLM remember something from way back in the conversation? They used 5 different categories to really challenge them. They had single hop questions, monthly hop questions, where you got to piece together info, and then temporal reasoning questions about times and dates, which turned out to be tricky for these LLMs, and then questions about common sense, and even like adversarial questions, trying to trick them.
So like, hey AI, remember that thing we talked about like 5 sessions ago? Tell me about it, but I might be trying to trick you. That's a real mental workout. What was number 2?
Okay, so the second task was event summarization. So this goes beyond just remembering random facts. It challenges LLMs to actually understand, the causal and temporal connections. So not just what happened, but why did it happen? And how does it all fit together?
Oh, wow. So we've seen how LLMs handle memory recall, but now we're talking about understanding the bigger picture, how things connect.
Right. And that's where it gets even more interesting. Because even some of the most powerful LLMs, the ones with huge context windows, they struggle to put it all together.
Really? Even with all that data, they couldn't figure out the flow of events.
Yeah, it's almost like they're good at memorizing, but not so good at understanding. Like the narrative, the cause and effect over time, it makes you think, what is it about us,
Yeah.
about how our brains are wired that lets us do this so easily?
That's a great point. So we've got QA, test in the memory, and event summarization, looking at connections. What was the third challenge in this LLM obstacle course?
This is where those images come in. It's called multimodal dialogue generation. Basically, the LLMs had to come up with responses that made sense, given the conversation and any of the images.
So it's like, all right, AI, we've been talking, and now I'm showing you this picture. What do you think? Does it make sense? React to it.
Exactly. They had to prove they could handle words and visuals, just like we do every day.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Could they do it? Could they hold their own in these multimodal conversations?
So this is where it gets really, really interesting. What they found was, giving the LLMs more structured info about the speakers really helped. Specifically, using a technique called RG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, with observations about the speakers.
Okay, wait a minute. We talked about observations earlier. Remind me what those are again.
Oh, yeah, it's easy to get lost in the weeds here. Remember how each AI agent had their persona, like a character? Well, observations, they're like little pieces of info about those personas, taken straight from the conversation. Think of it as like a cheat sheet for the LLM, so it can quickly remember who it's talking to.
So instead of giving the LLM like the whole messy conversation, they give it these organized notes about each character, like a little black book of personality insights.
Exactly. And what they found is that by giving it that structured info, those little observations about the speakers, the LLMs did way better. They stayed on track and said stuff that was relevant. It's like giving them a map to navigate the conversation.
That's fascinating. So even for these super smart LLMs, organization helps. They need structure. Okay, we've covered the setup, the 3 tasks in Locomo. What were the big takeaways, like the aha moments from all of this?
Well, one of the big things they found was, even with those improvements, the longer context windows and RGA, the LLMs still couldn't do as well as humans on these really complex conversational tasks.
So they're getting better, but still have a ways to go.
Exactly. And the gap is really obvious when you look at how they deal with time. Remember how those time and date questions were hard for them? That points to a bigger issue. They seem to struggle with the whole idea of a time passing and connecting events over a long period of dialogue.
Yeah, like they're missing that natural feel for time that we have.
Yeah, it's like they can remember events, but they don't get the flow, the cause and effect that plays out over time.
It's like they're seeing snapshots, but not the whole movie, huh?
Right.
Which makes you wonder, what is it about us? How are our brains wired to understand time so naturally?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's not just about time either. Remember those trick questions? The ones designed to fool the LLM.
Oh, yeah, the gotcha question.
They had a really hard time with those too.
So even though they're smart, you can still trick them.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Here's an example. They asked an LLM about who did something specific earlier in the conversation. But the way they asked it was meant to be confusing. And even though the LLM had the whole conversation history, it got tricked and gave the wrong answer.
Whoa, so even though they have the info, a tricky question can throw them off.
It shows that intelligence, whether it's us or AI, isn't just about remembering stuff. It's about how you use that information, how you filter it and understand it.
For sure, and this study really shows that LLMs, they're cool and all, but they're still kind of fragile.
Yeah, you can throw them off with ambiguity, with subtle stuff in the language,
Right.
in ways that we usually aren't.
So we've seen that LLMs have weaknesses like understanding time and avoiding tricks. But we've also seen that things like Argy and those little observation cheat sheets can help.
Exactly, those observations. It's like they're giving the LLM a filing cabinet for its brain, a way to organize all that info. And it seems to make a huge difference.
So it's not just how much they remember, but how they organize it.
You got it.
It's like the difference between having a messy library versus a well-organized one.
Exactly. It seems like if we want them to get good at these long, complex conversations, we need to give them better tools to manage information. It's not just about memory, it's about how they use it.
This research was all about text-based LLMs, right?
Right, they were processing and making text. Even though they had to deal with images, they weren't learning from them.
Right, just words, no sounds or images involved in the actual learning.
Yeah, but what happens when we add other stuff into the mix? Like audio, video, real-world sensory data. What if, instead of just reading about a sunset, the LM could actually see it, hear the waves, feel the warmth?
Whoa, hold on. You're talking about LLMs that can experience the world, like with senses, like us.
Exactly. Imagine the possibilities. An LLM that could not only get language, but also understand facial expressions, emotions in someone's voice, the beauty of music, the texture of a painting. It's a whole new world.
It makes you wonder, if we give them access to those experiences, would they learn and remember differently? Could it help them understand time better, cause and effect, the way things are connected in the world?
It's such a cool question. And it's one that researchers are working on right now. I mean, think about it. Our understanding of time, our memories, even who we are, it's all shaped by our experiences with the world. If we can give LLMs access to that kind of data, who knows what they'll be capable of?
It's kind of scary, but also really exciting.
It really is. And as we keep pushing these boundaries, we got to be careful. Think about the ethics of making AIs that can learn and remember like us.
Absolutely. As we saw in this deep dive, even with the limits they have now, LLMs are super powerful.
Totally.
As they keep getting better, we need to have serious discussions about how we develop them,
For sure.
about the good things and the risks too.
I completely agree. We got to make sure these AI advancements help us make our lives better and help us understand the world. But we also need to make sure they don't mess with our values.
Well, that's a lot to think about. We went deep into long-term memory in LLMs, found out some of their weak spots, and got a glimpse of what they might be able to do in the future.
It's been great talking about this with you. And to everyone listen, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the future of AI. It's going to shape the world we live in.
Couldn't have said it better myself. To all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep pushing the boundaries. Until next time.
Right. Just words, no sounds or images involved in the actual learning.
Exactly. But what happens when we start incorporating other stuff into the mix? Like audio, video, real-world sensory data. What if instead of just reading about a sunset, the LLM could actually see it, hear the waves crashing, feel the warmth?
Whoa, hold on. You're talking about LLMs that can, experience the world with senses? Like
Exactly.
us? Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine the possibilities. An LLM that can not only get language, but also understand facial expressions, emotions in someone's voice, the beauty of music, the texture of a painting. It's a whole new world.
It makes you wonder, if we give them access to those experiences, would they learn and remember differently? Could it help them understand time better? Cause and effect to the way things are connected in the world?
It's such a cool question. And it's one that researchers are working on right now. I mean,
Mhm.
think about it. Our understanding of time, our memories, even who we are, it's all shaped by our experiences with the world. If we can give LLMs access to that kind of data, who knows what they'll be capable of?
It's kind of scary, but also really exciting.
It really is. And as we keep pushing these boundaries, we got to be careful. Think about the ethics of making AIs that can learn and remember like us.
Absolutely. As we saw in this deep dive, even with the limits they have now, LLMs are super powerful.
Totally. As they keep getting better, we need to have serious discussions about how we develop them, about the good things, and the risks too. We got to make sure these AI advancements help us, make our lives better and help us understand the world. But we also need to make sure they don't mess with our values.
Well, that's a lot to think about. We went deep into long-term memory in LLMs, found out some of their weak spots, and got a glimpse of what they might be able to do in the future.
It's been great talking about this with you. And to everyone listening, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the future of AI. It's going to shape the world we live in.
Couldn't have said it better myself. To all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep pushing the boundaries. Until next time.